Welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk about film noir. And yeah, we're going to discuss that film genre with Michael Ventura. So start us off, Michael.
Well, an interesting thing. Uh, First, we got to figure out what we mean by noir. It's not only a kind of story that is dark. Noir means dark black, uh, especially by the standard. But it's a kind of a way of shooting, a style of cinematography, uh, contrast, lights and darks. Of course, it began as a black and white medium. And did you want to ask a question just now? Okay, when you said okay?
No, no.
Oh, okay. And that style has an interesting history, which I'll do very briefly. In 1915 is when D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation came out. That shook the American cinema and basically created the music industry, even though films have been going on, commercial films have been going on since 1903 and before. But the longer feature film had been going on in Europe 2, 3, 4 years before American feature films started being like 4-reel, 5-reel, 6-reel films. The average American film was 2 reels or 1 reel, or even a half reel. And the studio that eventually became Paramount was famous Jesse Lasky, famous players, and its major director was Cecil B. DeMille. And Cecil B. DeMille and his usual crew did a picture in 1915, to the end of 1915, called The Cheat, starring the Japanese actor Sesu Hayakawa and a woman named Franny something. Franny, who was a star for a while. And I can't remember her last name. But, hold on, I'll get it. She deserves it. Franny Ward. Fanny. That's why I was getting it wrong. Fannie. Fanny Ward. And this was a big picture when it came out. I won't go over the whole plot, but suffice it to say, this Japanese businessman, very sophisticated, in order to help a business associate, that associate's wife, who's Caucasian American, agrees to be with him. And when she reneges on her agreement, he brands her shoulder. And it's a very, very dramatic, melodramatic thing. And excellent acting. Cecil Hayakawa subsequently won, when there were Academy Awards, began in about 10 years, an Academy Award, and is famous for his role on the bridge on the River Kwai, a good 30 years after The Cheat. But The Cheat was really responded to in Europe for its lighting, for its daring photography. Now, a strange thing about this is that Cecil B. DeMille's crew in the mid-teens, 1915, 16, 17, wasn't famous for that. Their mise-en-scene was kind of dull. Their stories, what moved the film was the story and the actors. He discovered Gloria Swanson, and she became very, very big. And but in this one film, it's technically far superior to anything he was doing in DeMille. And this lighting, it was even said in Europe, finally something new from America, because the Europeans were far ahead in terms of lighting than the United States, and they were far ahead in terms of style. If you look at the 1913 film L'Enfant de Paris, A Child of Paris, you see a 2-hour film, pretty much, which is like 6-7 reels, with a quiet but very interesting plot involving this child, and immaculate lighting and photography. Most of it shot outside, although one of the things that distinguished European films in the turn of the century from about really from the 1880s on, was they filmed in studios. They invented the film studio, that would look very much like what a film studio looks like now. They mastered lighting very quickly, and so L'Enfant de Paris, directed by somebody named Léonce Perret, is this graceful film technique that if you saw today, and you can, it's on DVD, you go, oh my God, that's so far ahead of what anybody was trying to do in the United States. But in any case, they were very impressed with the lighting and the pacing of The Cheat. Now, this came back to America, this style of lighting and pacing, through the German film movement in the 20s.
Yeah.
Influenced by The Cheat. And film history, as it was written till about 2010, really didn't have the material. You couldn't get An Infinite Paris on a DVD. You couldn't get The Cheat on a DVD. Since then, all these silent films have become available. But through the German filmmaking of the 20s and early 30s, they developed black and white in a way that made possible its expression in Hitchcock films and other films, in westerns, John Ford, deepened the whole visual expression of film. But they got their initial hints from The Cheat, and so where did noir start? It started in literature. It started in rather popular literature. I think the first thing you can look at and point to as noir, period, noir, exactly noir, is the mid-1920s Hemingway short story, The Killers. It has a very simple plot. Some gangsters come to a diner in a small town in the Midwest. They're looking for a guy they call a Swede. A kid gets out of the diner and runs to the Swede, who just turns over in bed and looks at the wall. He's not going to run anymore. And they go and kill him after holding this diner hostage for a little while. It's pure noir. The dialogue, the setup, the fatalism, and this is picked up. The attitude of it was picked up in Hemingway's first and best novel, The Sun Also Rises, which has a noir kind of feel. They call it hard-boiled prose. And Dashiell Hammett in The Maltese Falcon, the novel. And then you had gangster movies, but that's crime movies. That's not noir. Noir involves people, I like to say, who have deep self-hatred, but also enormous self-respect at the same time. And that paradox makes them dangerous. In noir, the good guys are as dangerous as the bad guys. In noir, a certain fatalism is inevitable. Which is kind of redundant because fatalism.
Yeah,
you get it. Okay, sorry. But so you have in The Maltese Falcon, which you could argue which is the first real Hollywood noir movie, blah blah blah. But The Maltese Falcon is certainly the first most famous one. And you have in that a hero. In the noir, the hero is always flawed. The hero, Sam Spade, played by Humphrey Bogart, well, for one thing, he's sleeping with his partner's wife. And that's frowned upon in polite society. And at the same time, when his partner gets shot and killed, his noble side comes out. He has to make it right. And in spite of the cops, who the first thing he did it, he has to find out what this is all about. And he meets these people in the process of it. Mary Astor, who he falls in love with. And maybe she loves him and maybe she doesn't. But she plays along. And Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet, this marvelous cast. And one thing starts to cancel out another. Peter Lorre and Sidney Greenstreet are rivals, then they get together and they're against Bogart, and then Bogart's secretary thinks Mary Astor is a straight-up person, a good egg. It turns out that maybe she's combining and manipulating to get, they're all after this jewel-studded falcon from Malta. And as the plot progresses, it becomes more and more involved in loyalties, betrayals, until finally you realize two things. One thing is that Mary Astor was behind a lot of this, and Bogart has got to arrest this woman whom he loves. And he does. And the second thing is, this Maltese falcon is worthless. It's absolutely worthless. It's a statuette. There's nothing hidden in it. What these people are striving for, what is of value to them, is worthless. And it's very easy to flip that into Noir's comment on bourgeois society in general. And I'm just using bourgeois as a descriptive term. I'm not using it as a pejorative term. Comfortable society, let's call it in general. And the heart of Noir, the heart of the Maltese Falcon, is to say everything you want, everything that is so important to you is empty. And even your love is all twisted up because, look, the gal's a murderess, and you're not that much better. And in the book, it's very interesting, and the John Huston, director of the Maltese Falcon, couldn't do this really in the film. But in the very last scene, if the film follows the book scene for scene, but in the very last scene, sort of to comfort his secretary, Sam Spade puts his hand on her shoulder, or like on her back or shoulder blade, and she cringes. That's the last thing that happens in that book. She cringes a little because this unmasking of realities, both in Sam Spade and in the people he's dealing with, makes this just straight ahead, smart secretary from a normal family and everything, just makes her a little afraid and disgusted. And you get that a bit in the very final words of the film, which are when the detective detective says to Sam Spade, "What is that thing anyway?" And Sam Spade says, Bogart says, "The stuff that dreams are made of." And it's worthless.
So that's the theme that you're talking about right now. That theme kind of runs through the James M. Cain movies too, right?
Yes, very much so. James M.
And
Cain is a master.
yeah, and so talking about the start of noir, wouldn't M be in there somewhere?
I think so, but I think
It's a different
certainly,
theme.
certainly in terms of style, but in terms of M, you have, I
Horror.
think M is more, if you'll forgive the word, cosmic, in the sense of you have this murderer striking fear in, if I'm remembering correctly, striking fear in a whole city, and a going back to Jack the Ripper in London in the 1890s, but going forward to the serial killers of the U.S.A. and now everywhere, really beginning 1970s, 80s,
Yeah.
and so that uses all the noir techniques, and you have
Right.
a very
Yeah, so the technique is and the shooting is very noir, but the theme is more horror, I guess.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and also we talk about noir, or we talk about horror. Noir is moral horror. Noir doesn't necessarily frighten you. There's nothing scary in the Maltese Falcon. It's dramatic, but you don't sit in the audience scared. Where M, you get creepy. You see that film for
Yeah.
the first time, it's creepy, and but these borders, the way we talk about them, aren't fixed. They're very murky borders. Somebody else could make a case for M being a noir film, but I think M thematically is, and especially Germany at the time, M is looking at what are we also afraid of.
Yeah. It has a deep moral subtext about what is justice and who's going to administer justice with
Yes,
the where he has that kind of street court that he has to
mm-hmm.
go through and everything.
Where noir is, what is life worth?
Yeah.
What's it worth to you? Now, my favorite noir picture, which is Out of the Past, with Robert Mitchum and Jane Greer, and a brilliant young Kirk Douglas, and Dickie Wells playing I think I have his name right, but Dickie somebody, playing a teenage deaf and dumb observer. And the deaf and dumb is the most expressive person in the film. And he gets the last, if you forgive it, word, even though it's not a word he says. But in Out of the Past, you have, and it's narrated by the protagonist, which is Robert Mitchum. You have a gambler. These are people from the nightlife. These are not daytime people. These are not people you're going to go to work with the factory or the office. These are not people that a respectable woman is going to have meet for coffee at the drugstore, where a lot of people met for coffee and sodas and stuff in those days. These are people already across the line. And Mitchum is a private investigator. as private investigators are portrayed mostly in these pictures, they used to be cops. Or like Bogart in The Big Sleep, he used to be a lawyer. And now they're doing this. He was in the DA's office, and now he's a private investigator. Even Rockford on TV in the 70s, who was kind of, the lighter side of noir, certainly. But he used to be in prison.
Yeah.
That's his backstory. People kind of forget that.
Yeah.
But he used to be in prison. He was convicted of crimes. Now, technically, he could never be a private investigator in California if he'd been in prison, but that's okay. We don't care.
Well, I think there was always some kind of funny business with his license, actually.
Yes,
if I
yes.
remember right.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And so Robert Mitchum is working a gas station on Route 395. Now, usually film critics that I know and who know film better than I do, but they don't know the road as well as I do. Now, 395 used to be the quickest way between LA and Reno. Reno had just been, or had for about 10 years been, a place where gambling is legal. And at that time, Reno was bigger than Vegas. So if, like this is in the 1940s, Vegas hasn't started to take off yet, just beginning to take off. Where Reno's been a gambling town for a long time since the frontier day. And if you read about this film, it'll say that the Robert Mitchum character is running from his past. Well, he's got a funny way of doing it. He runs a gas station about 150 miles south of Reno. It's only a 2-lane, but it is the busiest highway between LA and Reno at the time. There are no interstates. And anybody traveling between LA and Reno, that little town has a couple of gas stations, and you're going to stay at one because you're traveling in these cars where you have to fill up about every 150 miles. So you're going to get Reno-bound traffic, you're going to get LA-bound traffic from Reno. That's a funny way of hiding out from gamblers.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, somebody you know is going to stop at that gas station, and that's what happens. And he's recognized, and his boss is Kirk Douglas, gambling boss in Reno and in New York. And Robert Mitchum was supposed to find Kirk Douglas's girl, Jane Greer, but he finds her and falls in love with her. And then they run away. And then she runs away from him. And he seems to be going straight and and he's had enough of it. But if you're familiar with the map, he has a funny way of doing it. And he has a young girlfriend, about 10, 15 years younger than him, in this town, this nice little town. And if you drive that route, you can see that courthouse just the way it was then. It's just the way it still is. But he's seeing this girl. Her high school boyfriend is not pleased. He always thought he'd marry this girl. Her parents aren't pleased. There's something wrong with that guy. And clearly there is something wrong with that guy. The deaf-mute kid is his helper in the garage. Kid's about 17. And they communicate very well. Sign language, sort of telepathy. But they make it work. And this Out of the Past makes that relationship work, which is essential for the ending. And he's seeing this lovely, and there's a great line in it where creek. And he's not telling her much about his past. And she's talking about love. And he says, well, maybe love is like luck. You got to go all the way to find it. And she says, you do to keep it. So you have, in this picture, you have what I call day people, living by day people rules and ways. And she's saying something about love, that if you love, you got to do it all the way. And he thought that may be about luck, because he's a gambler, besides being a private eye. But he hadn't ever thought about that in terms of love. You don't get the impression that when he fell in love with Jane Greer, he'd ever really thought about what it is to fall in love. Yes, romance. Yes, he's a guy growing up. He's now in his early 30s, maybe mid 30s. So he's seen his share of action, but love. And yet he falls in love with Jane Greer. And she tells him, and she reminds him at the end of the film that she told him that she's not a good girl. And he just says, baby, I don't care. So those terms, those existential terms have been set. This has left all the usual love stuff of even good movies behind. This is, baby, I don't care. And long story short, he gets entangled with the Kirk Douglas character again, because Jane Greer is with the Kirk Douglas character. And they want him to do something that he knows is a trap, but he's going to do it. And he says the line that was the title of the novel from which the story came. He says, build my gallows high, baby. He knows he's going to his doom, but he feels more alive around Jane Greer and this kind of environment than he could ever feel in that small town. And in that situation is where he belongs. And so he goes through this daring stuff, and I'm not going to give away the ending. For people who haven't seen Out of the Past, it's a surprise ending, and it's not. And it's very fitting that the one who gives the benediction cannot speak and cannot hear. And again, this was a whole contrast, much sharper than a film like The Maltese Falcon. A whole contrast of in the daylight, you can look at the world one kind of way. In the night, in Noir, all that turns inside out. It's like consciously, you people are saying all these things, and you mean them consciously. Unconsciously, you're looking for stuff that you will not admit until it's shoved right in your face, and even then, maybe not. Not all of you, but some of you. And Noir's power is to put that kind of existential, inside-out way of life where being happy isn't the most important thing. Living a long time isn't the most important thing. Some of them make money the most important thing, but it's really for the action. The most important thing is the action. And those crazy moments when crazy people connect. And you can say that that is very, very dark vis-a-vis society. And then you look at the box office on Out of the Past and The Maltese Falcon, and for the time it was pretty good. People wanted to see these pictures. So they were expressive of something going on in the country, in the culture. You James M. Cain, amazing The Postman Always Rings Twice, with John Garfield and Lana Turner. And again, you have a actor who is tough. He's not tough because he's a tough guy. He's tough because he's tough. John Garfield was a street kid. He came up. Much you read Mitchum's biography. He was in coal mines and he was doing this and he was doing that. I mean, these guys had seen the world. And in excuse me, in The Postman Always Rings Twice, if you remember, and make sure I have this right, it's glaringly bright. The lighting is just bright. Lana Turner is bright. She wears white. She wears not stuff you associate with noir. She's wearing shorts, in a time when that was fairly unusual. And all she wants of John Garfield is just bumming his way through California, getting a job from her husband who runs a diner. All he wants from John Garfield is to kill him, kill her husband. And same thing in Double Indemnity with Barbara Stanwyck and Fred McMurray. All I want from you is, I love you. All I want is you to kill my husband. And the thing about both those films is it makes that plausible.
Yeah.
Suddenly you're there in the audience going, yeah, well, that's not too much to ask. and on the one hand, you have, Mom, the Flag, and Apple Pie. And on the other hand, you have this America of, yeah, I love you, just kill my husband.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's another aspect or facet to it that's distinctly Californian, in that they had kind of sold California on this exotic mission style facade, and sold the real estate and all these tracts and everything, and as kind of a sunny beach mission style getaway or whatever, and but there was this whole seamy side underneath that, and I think that that's a big part of those noir movies too.
I think that's very important because California is the capital of noir.
Yeah.
Not New York.
Right.
And Chicago may be the capital of crime movies, and New York too, but California is the capital of noir.
Yeah, there has to be sunny. There has to be that brightness for it to be really dark, right?
Right, and the whole idea of they associate New Age with California. They forget to associate noir with California.
Yeah.
Right up through Chinatown, where noir went Technicolor and was just as convincing, and where everybody's kind of a bad guy. Nobody's a good guy in Chinatown, except the daughter, and that other noir movie that I like a lot was set in Florida, but it's the same general thing, Body Heat. Yeah,
that's a whole other. That's one of my favorite movie genres that I call the Florida double cross film, and there's a few movies that I really like a lot that do that, like Wild Things with Matt Dillon's a good one. That one with Denzel Washington, Out of Time, or I don't know if you've ever seen that, where he's a police. It's a great movie, but that's another Florida double cross movie. But that's like an entire genre, I think.
It's an offshoot of noir. I mean, Body Heat definitely is an offshoot of noir.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Where you have these bright places that were sold, as you say, as escapes from the dark.
Yeah.
And all you got to do is go there and hang out a while, and you find out differently. Name some of your noir movies.
Oh God, it's been a long time since I got in. What's the one, the the Hitman one with the yeah, I can't remember the name of that movie. The one, yeah,
Who's in it?
I can't remember. Yeah, he's a hitman and he's on the run, and gun is in the title. I can't. Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, I can't really remember many noir movies just off the top of my head. I kept thinking of those when we were talking about Robert Mitchum. I kept thinking about those remakes that, like, The Big Sleep that he made in the '70s,
Yep.
which are okay.
Well, the one I think is better than okay is and is in a way. I like it as entertainment better than Chinatown. Farewell, My Lovely.
Right? Yeah. Really, you like that better than Chinatown? Really?
I don't mean it's done as well. I don't mean it's as great a film.
Yeah.
I mean, if I want to sit down, maybe with some popcorn.
Yeah.
Jazz loves to make popcorn with olive oil. If I want to sit down and just be entertained,
Right.
It's more entertaining.
Yeah.
It's more fun that way. Chinatown, you got incest. You got ends up.
Yeah. Right.
This hopeless. It's Chinatown, Jake. Don't
Right.
Meaning, this is absolutely beyond our capacity to understand or resolve.
Well, there's something about a movie about the '40s made in the '70s in LA that something about that really appeals to me in a way, and I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know why. I think that a lot of that '40s architecture was still, that Art Deco scene was still there in the '70s before.
It's still there now. It's still there. In West
Right,
Hollywood,
but
it's still there.
but it's kind of blocked out by all the glass buildings and the Gary stuff and
Well, if you shoot it right,
yeah.
and one of the things about Chinatown and about Farewell, My Lovely, is that it's shot with a real understanding
Yeah.
of.
Well, I think that in the '70s there was a certain dirtiness to the streets. There was a certain
yes.
funkiness to.
That's when I got. That's when I got to LA. LA was funky.
There was a certain funkiness to LA that, like, juxtaposed with making it in the 1940s. I don't know. There's something appealing about that to me. But another movie that I've always really liked is The Late Show with Art Carney and Lily Tomlin. That's
right.
I mean, it's kind of a weird noir movie, but yeah, I like that movie too. But yeah.
And True Confessions.
Yeah.
With Robert De Niro and Robert
pretty
De Niro,
good.
and a great supporting cast.
Yeah. Could have been better. I don't know. I watched it a little while ago, and I don't know. Just the whole time I was like, yeah, this could have been better.
Well, I guess ever since I was a kid, I just take the movie as it is.
Yeah.
And I like it or I don't like it or whatever it is. But while I'm watching the movie, it's just the movie. It's all of life.
Yeah.
Life stops at the edge of the screen, and I don't question it much. In that way, I think that's what made me a readable film critic.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was a good film critic or not, but people read me.
I guess also that movie is like, personally, I feel like it's beating up on LA Irish Catholics, which is something that doesn't exist anymore, and my family was like really like a real part of that establishment, right? And I kind of feel like it just gave this really tawdry version of Irish Catholics and everything in that world.
It certainly does that.
Yeah. And then, like, you look at the producers and everything, and it's just kind of unfair, Like, they're not making movies about themselves, so.
Well, Well,
But
it's funny when I don't know if you've seen the film Robert De Niro directed. Oh hell, what's the title of it? It's about the CIA.
oh right, yeah, the shepherd, the good shepherd.
The Good Shepherd. The Good
Yeah,
Shepherd.
right.
And where he makes all these terrible bad guys wasps.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, they
he's
were
been,
pretty much,
he's
you
been,
know.
he's
Yeah.
been in. Yeah, he wasn't telling a lie, but
Right.
but but he's been in all these gangster movies where
Yeah.
Italians are the lowlifes.
Yeah.
So he makes a spy movie where the wasps are the lowlifes.
Yeah. It's a good movie. I like that
It is a
movie.
good movie.
Yeah.
It's quite a good movie.
Yeah.
But getting on back to Noir,
Yeah.
a picture that I consider noir, but most people probably. Also directed by John Huston.
Say the name of the movie again.
The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, here's a movie, again, very bright. It's shot in Mexican deserts.
So you think of that? You think of that as noir because I always like it's not an urban film, right?
No, it's not an urban film, but it has the sense of the closer you get to what you want, the worse you become.
Yeah.
And they get very close to what they want, and it all goes to hell. And then when you have at the end, I don't mind spoiling this ending. When you have John Huston, Walter Huston, the great actor, the father of John Huston, when he's dancing and cackling, he's watching the gold he's struggled for blow away in the wind, and he's telling this young guy, Tim Holt, I think his name was the actor, he's telling the guy, "You better laugh, boy, you better dance."
Yeah, that's a great scene. Yeah.
Because this is life, this is it, you better laugh and dance. And so that attitude and the way how quickly people became corrupted, it gave it a noir feel for me.
Yeah, that's another. You could call that another genre of movies too, though, where the like a tropical outpost or something, and they're looking for a treasure, and then they start double crossing each other and trying to kill each other type deal. Yeah.
And the great 1920, I think, movie by von Stroheim, not von Stroheim. Yeah, von Stroheim. Greed, where the very last scene, two men are in the desert, one has killed the other, but they're handcuffed together, and there's no way this guy's going to live.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. And it went on for about 3 hours. This movie. Eric von Stroheim, yeah. But you know, as I think of noir, and the basic thing seems to me, every person, every character, even the bad guys as well as the so-called good guys, has a personal code. And the women, whether they're femme fatales or not, are as strong as the men. You know, Barbara Stanwyck is stronger, if anything, than Fred McMurray in Double Indemnity. Jane Greer is tough as tough. And when she's finally confronted, she says, "I told you who I was and what I was. You looked at me to be anything you wanted me to be. I was never that, and I never faked it." And moments of psychological acuity, sharpness that you're not going to see in most kinds of films. You know, science fiction doesn't go there.
Yeah.
And westerns don't go there normally. Unless you want to talk about something like Unforgiven as a noir western. And it is a how can I put it? It's a quiet films, you hardly ever have, or you have the emphasis isn't really on shooting, strangling, or big fist fights. Things happen, but it's always about character. That these things hinge on character.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Which would mean
moral quandaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. How far are you going to go?
Yeah.
And what are you going to do when you get there?
Yeah. There's another genre of movie that really touches on that, which is the guy's car breaks down in small town in the desert movies, like U-Turn, that Oliver Stone movie with Sean Penn. It's a good one. And then, did you ever see Red Rock West with Nicolas Cage?
No.
That's a good one too. But yeah, that's a certain kind of genre of movie too, where the stranger comes into town and yeah, needs to get his car fixed.
Bad Day at Black Rock.
Yeah, Bad Day at Black Rock for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good one. Would you call that noir?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It has that hard-boiled thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody's trying to keep a secret.
Yeah.
It's which is also kind of a genre in itself. The whole town is trying to keep a secret, and good people do bad things to keep this secret. You know, there's a way in which High Plains Drifter is kind of noir.
Yeah, yeah.
And so noir is a genre that gets riffed on in other genres, where you have a kind of noir person or a noir moral ambiguity.
Yeah. Do you think it's a necessity in a noir movie that the protagonist is damaged?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You know, Chandler, Raymond Chandler has that famous that essay he called The Simple Art of Murder, about the detective story and the hard-boiled story in noir. And it has the famous line, "Down these mean streets must go. Down these mean streets a man must go who is not himself mean, who is neither tarnished nor afraid." But that doesn't mean he's not damaged. You know, he wouldn't be doing this. This is a man, the Chandler hero is a man of exceptional character, but what's he doing? Willis Marlowe is his name usually. What's he doing there among the lowlifes? You know, what's he doing being a private investigator? He was the DA, or in the district attorney's office, and something happened, and now he's not. So Chandler says of him, he must be the best man in his world and a good enough man for any world. But he's not. He's talking about his abilities, his intelligence. But why does he like the world that he's in? Why can't he get out of it? Is always the unanswered question. In especially Raymond Chandler's, but also Dashiell Hammett. What are you guys doing there? Which is also a question to the reader. What are you guys doing there? Why is this interesting to you?
What do you think was the closest that TV ever came to a noir TV show?
That's a good question. American TV. There was a series by Michael Mann.
Crime Story?
Crime Story.
Yeah.
Crime Story came pretty close, especially when they went to Vegas.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was a cop series set in Baltimore, Homicide,
yeah,
Life on the Street.
Yeah, I love that show. That was a great show.
And that was a very, very good show.
Yeah.
And they didn't fuck around on that. I'm not allowed to say that. They didn't mess around on that.
Yeah. I thought Andre Brower was such a good actor, man,
Amazing,
and
amazing
he
actor.
he never got another role like that. It really disappointed me. You know, he's in this silly like sitcom now, and
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, well, all the actors in it were pretty good. The Baldwin guy, I forget which Baldwin it was, but he was really good. One of the Baldwin
Yep,
brothers,
yep,
and Yaphet Kotto was great in that show
yep.
too. Yeah,
And in fact, I was thinking of that show the other day. I was thinking of, there were two episodes I was thinking of just the other day. One was uh, this kid who commits murder and can't really admit it, and can't really get the importance of it until Andre Braugher is telling him what to do in prison. He gives him his card. He says, keep your back to the wall. Don't do anybody any favors,
yeah,
etc., etc. And the other one was a guy caught between the subway and the platform
yeah. I remember
who
that
was
one.
who
Yeah,
was going to die,
yeah, yeah,
and you had to kind of break it to him gently that there's
yeah,
no good way out of this.
yeah.
And as a guy who was on a lot of subway platforms in his youth, I went, "Oh shit, I can feel that."
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever get to watch The Wire?
I haven't.
You have to
Should
see
I?
that. Yeah, it's like I think it's the best American TV show that was ever made. I like that's by far the best American TV show.
Well,
Yeah.
you and Steve Erickson agree, so I'm gonna have to.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to break down and watch it.
it's the same guys that did Homicide, right? Like a
Uh,
lot it
uh,
takes place in Baltimore, and
yeah.
I mean it's not Fontana, but there's a bunch of guys that worked on Homicide
Hmm.
that did The Wire too. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's a great show. But what about Peter Gunn?
Well, Peter Gunn was terrific because Peter Gunn, uh, if you're a kid in that time,
Yeah,
you probably didn't go to the noir films,
right,
and
right.
they're not being shown yet on TV.
Yeah,
But you have that great theme music,
hmm,
da, 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 da,
yeah,
da, da, da. It's just, I don't even know if it's music, but it really stirred things up, and it had that noir sense as much as you could do in TV
yeah,
uh, at the time.
yeah.
And John Cassavetes was in a TV like it called Johnny Staccato,
Right, yeah,
which is what I used to call him, but where he played a jazz pianist
yeah,
who was a private eye
yeah.
that lasted about a season.
You know what's
But
funny is that Blake Edwards made Peter Gunn was a Blake Edwards production, right? And
right,
I watched an episode of it, and there's so much homoeroticism in that show, and I think just just it being a Blake Edwards show, but it just like I was like, wow, man, like there's this one part, he has this friend that's like a recurring friend in the show, and there's this one part where he's got his shirt off and the friend's like massaging him and stuff, but yeah, Blake Edwards is funny, but yeah, what about do you remember a show with Robert Loggia where he's a like a cat burglar?
yeah, I never thought him as an actor.
Really?
Yeah, I never thought him as an actor.
Huh. Hmm.
I don't ask me why. I got nothing against the guy. I never,
Yeah, yeah.
he never got to me as an actor.
Huh.
Like Tony, what's his name? Tony. There's a Tony,
I
another
don't
Italian that
know.
I never thought as an
It's
actor.
not Tony Danza.
No, I'll think of it sometime at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
But and there's kind of rural noir of Justified.
Yeah, I haven't. I think I watched like one episode of that show. Is that worth watching?
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah.
All right.
Now their tongue is firmly in their cheek about a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
but they have really good actors,
Yeah, I love that actor.
and all the parts or almost all the parts are really well done, and it lives on then you have Boyd, played by this wonderful actor Walton Goggins, who's the main bad guy. And they're actually a lot alike, and that's what the show lives on. They know each other. They work the mines together.
Yeah.
Before the mines shut down.
Yeah.
Both of them don't play by the rules. There's a point where some big city crime bosses are trying to get into Walton Goggins action, because he's got a very profitable thing going down there in Harlan County, and in the scene where he turns the tables on them, he says to the effect, "You guys are criminals. I'm an outlaw. It's not the same." and suddenly they're in his power. So it's somewhere between a Western and a noir piece.
Yeah.
But it works, and the actors are good. Each season, the actors are good. Jasmine and I have watched that series twice, I think.
What do you think
I haven't seen many of those actors around, which is a pity.
Yeah, I like the main actor a lot. He's really good. Yeah.
Yep.
He might have been kind of typecast after that, but yeah. What did you think of Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid?
That's that comedy, right?
Yeah, it's the one where they splice in Steve Martin into the actual.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of movie doesn't reach me.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It's like Woody Allen's Play It Again, Sam.
Yeah.
I'm not laughing.
Yeah.
And it may be just something as personal and as maybe immature as you're making fun of something I love and I don't like that.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get into European noir movies.
I might not know enough about European noir movies.
Yeah,
that might be the reason.
I was telling you before about a series of Milan mafia movies from the 70s that was on Prime Video for a while, and there was like 3 different movies that were really good, and then they disappeared, and I'll try and find them and send them to you. But why don't we stop there for the night?
Okay.
Okay.